Last Sunday night, Katrina shared her music and her love with us, and we appreciate that. It was a great concert, wonderful turnout, great energy, okay? So thank you, dear. Thank you. Last week, I talked a little bit about the principles of love. For example, love shows no favoritism. Love just is. No matter how you act, how you show up, you're still loved, and you are loved. Love also provides change. Love is a change force in our lives. And it changes the way we see things, the way we perceive things, and the way that we show up when we step into love. That love is unconditional. That you love somebody because they are your brother and sister. You love somebody because you're created to love, and that you are love itself. Today I want to talk about the power of love and give you some examples of that power of love. You know, I think all of us know that sometimes life produces the kinds of situations and events that no Hollywood script could ever come up with for each of us individually. If each of you were able to write a book about what's happened in your life, it probably would be a bestseller, because our lives are not particularly predictable. They are comical. They're ambiguous. Sometimes they are tragic. And sometimes they just show up in a way that we are in awe. But whatever happens, there's only space for love, kindness, happy occurrences, and simple wonder. That's what's really here in front of us and what was available to us. You see, what the power of love is really all about, it allows us to laugh at ourselves, thank goodness, to relax into the unknown. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but through the power of love, we can relax into that, to show our compassion, and to embrace people and circumstances with our hearts wide open exactly where they are, not where we want them to be. And so we have this opportunity. So today what I want to do is share a few stories about the power of love. And the first one I want to tell you about is, it's a story about happiness. And there was this fellow who went to a tarot card reader and listened to him. And the tarot card reader said, this is going to be the happiest day of your life. I want you just to know that. So he went outside the office door. And the first thing that happened is somebody was walking a Rottweiler, and the Rottweiler tried to bite the guy, and he jumped back. Then what happens, he's walking down the sidewalk, and he trips, and he falls down. But he's okay until the bicyclist runs over him and breaks his leg, his ankle. And he's in happiness. What's the matter with that guy? He ought to give me my money back, right? I can't believe this. So the ambulance picks him up and takes him to the hospital. He'd been there just for a few minutes when a young woman walked in, sat down next to him. And he's telling her about his bad day. And then she said, well, I'm having a terrible day too. I got on the bus and everything seemed to be okay. But then what happened was I got up to get off the bus and the guy jerked the bus forward and I fell and I also broke my ankle. And he said that as they talked together, one of the things that happened, you know, that magical moment, so to speak, is that this woman that he was talking to, he became so interested in talking to her that he forgot that he was really in the waiting room. And they finally got him, fixed him. They fixed the lady. They shared phone numbers, and they went home. He says, this was the happiest day of my life because this woman is the mother now of my two children. So he believed in tarot cards. He believed in the possible, and he believed in happiness, and that things come from our hardships sometimes, or what we think they are, that turn into a bright light, into love itself. Remember, when you have what you think is a bad day, that those events can lead you to happiness or the good in your life. That's kind of why I think we live in dualism in our human condition. So we have something to compare with, something to understand. There's a second thing that happened that I want to share with you, and I ask you to participate in, is this week I was reading and looking for information about the power of love, and one young woman wrote that while she was sitting at her desk, that she sent a text to her husband, just in the middle of the day, and it said, "I love you." But what had happened was she hit the wrong button, and it went to her father. And she and her father had been having real difficulties, challenges, talking together, sharing together, just about to the point they weren't even speaking to each other. And he got this message, says, "I love you." And he wrote back just about immediately and says, "I love you also. Let's get together and work things out." Isn't that a cool one? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take your iPad or your phone. I want you to go to your text messaging or your email, and you don't have. And what you can do is, if you don't have that, you don't want to do that, or you don't know how to do it, and a few of us like that, I want you to take the card that you came in with, that green card, and write on the back, "I love you" to somebody, and then either call them or send it to them this week. Okay? And so take your text message, and in your text message, pick anybody that you'd like to, and just send a quick message saying, "I love you." Let's do that right now. Okay? This is an experience we're having, guys. All right? And if I do it, it'll really be an experience. But anyway, got to find my text message first. There we go. So, all right, here we go. Oh, see how the universe works? Okay. Okay, everybody send Ronnie a message, all right? Okay. So I've gotten mine done, and that means everybody else has probably gotten theirs done, okay? Because it's not my fingers don't work quite as well on that little phone, but it's okay. It works. So I want to ask you, how do you feel about that? You may still be doing it. How do you feel? Make you feel pretty good? You know? So you are a reflection of what you just did. What you're saying is, "I love you," and you're saying it from the love of your heart, from who you are and what you are, and you are expressing that. And so I just want you to feel that this morning, because that's what this is all about. There's another story that I share with you, is about a counselor. He was a school counselor, and he had a young boy that he worked with for a number of years who was very difficult, to say the least. He came from a difficult situation in his home. He was angry with the world. He was angry with everybody else. He was particularly smart, and so he would get bored with school. And you know what happens when kids get bored with school? Things happen that you don't want to happen if you're a teacher, because I've had that experience. And so anyway, this young fellow worked with this school counselor for several years, like I said. One day, the young fellow was particularly down, and he was saying, and he was opening up to this fellow, and he was saying to him, "You know, I don't feel like I can amount to anything. I don't have a chance." Somebody else has felt that way. So anyway, and so the school counselor talked with him for a few minutes about that. And then as he was talking to him, he saw a picture that he cut out and handed to the young boy. And it was a picture of Superman. And it said, and he said to him, "You can do anything because you are Superman." And the young boy didn't change overnight. But anyway, school was out, the young boy graduated and became a man. And it was about 10 or 15 years later that this young boy's picture as a man was in the paper. And what he had done is he'd become a fireman, and he'd saved the lives of a family. So his teacher saw that and called him. and said, gosh, I'd love to connect with you again. Could we have a cup of coffee together? And they got together and they talked. And as they were getting ready to leave, the young man said to him, I want to thank you for what you gave me. And he looked at him, and the young fellow pulled out his wallet, opened up the picture of Superman, and said, this goes with me everywhere I go. That's an act of love. He believed in that young man when the young man was unable to believe in himself, actually. And it was the love that came through that made the difference in their lives. And so that's the Superman story, okay? And then there's one other that I want to share with you. And this one, many of us can relate to, because most of us have had teenagers in our lives. Many of you. Either directly or indirectly. And either way you have it, you probably know what that means. That it's growing up. It's difficult at times. It's trying to figure out, how do I parent that? You know? That, right? Yeah. And that is not the way to look at it, but that's what we do sometimes. And so we struggle with this idea of, how do I love this child when I don't think they're very lovable? And I'm not talking to you, Jesse, honey. Okay? And so anyway, what this woman did is, as she was raising her child, she figured out that she would be tough love. Now, that's a nice sound, right? But her tough love was, I will punish her when she gets out of line. I will remind her of what she ought to be, because she's not that. I will yell at her louder than she can yell at me. And if I need to, I will put her down so she can raise herself up. She realized after a while that wasn't working, because of the response she was getting from her daughter. And so what she decided to do, which most of us in desperation do, is we go to parenting class. Or we read a book on parenting. And we figure it out. And we try it for about 3 weeks. And it doesn't work. Okay? For whatever reasons. Because there's an ingredient missing sometimes from those parenting classes. And that's the ingredient of unconditional love. So this mother is talking to a friend of hers at church, and she says to her, boy, I am having such a problem with my daughter. I've gone to parenting classes, blah, 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 and she went on and on, and this is my problem. And the woman said, no, that's not your problem. Your daughter is not your problem. You are the problem. She said, what? You are the problem. You're trying to fix her. Why don't you get out of the way and let Spirit fix her? She went home. She prayed about it. She thought about it. And she said, now how do I have to show up? And what is unconditional love like? And so she took everything that she had been taught about this idea of unconditional love. You know, most of us relate to conditional love. And that's what she was doing. And she took this idea of unconditional love. She said, how do I show up when my daughter does something wrong? I tell her gently that she may be able to make a different choice, but I love her still the same. When she yells at me, what do? I become quiet, and I respond with, I understand why you're yelling, but I love you unconditionally. When they would get into an argument about something, how to act or not to act, she would share with her, how do you think you should be acting? Not me. And however you act, I'm going to love you unconditionally. And she did this for about 6 months to a year, and she started to see a response. And when she watched her daughter graduate 2.5 years later, what happened was the daughter walked up to her and gave her a big hug and said, I love you unconditionally. The yelling stopped. The anger started to subside. It takes time. And these two women have a wonderful friendship and relationship today. Love is that power. Love is the essence that brings harmony and brings people into our lives in such a way that we learn from one another and we grow with one another through this power of love. We do not have to accept the love that we were brought up with. And I don't mean this, people love each other. They show it in different ways. Different families show it in different ways. But if it's not healthy, I don't have to stay in that mode. I don't have to duplicate that. I then can change so that I can see myself expressing the love as true love. Impartial, unconditional, compassionate, listening, and responding to the person. We can do that in our relationships with our spouses. We can do that in relationships with our partners. We can do that in relationships with our bosses. We can do that in relationship with the friend that I don't like anymore. Those things happen. But we can step in and be that conscious love. I want to just share that there were 4 teenagers in my life. And one of them, and he may be listening this morning, was really a challenge. And I did the parenting act. Okay? I could yell louder than he could yell. I could get angrier than he could get. I could put him down and he could put me down. And at age 28 in his life, we stopped speaking. And we did it for 2 to 2.5 years. And it was a conscious decision because I knew that what I was doing wasn't working. And that I was not able, until I got away a little bit, to be able to change as this mother changes, okay, and starting to accept him as unconditional love. I'd just come into unity. About 2.5 years after that happened, and we agreed not to talk to each other, he called me on the phone. And he just starts off like nothing ever happened. But Dad, how are things going today? I said, wait a minute. Let's just a second. We haven't talked for 2.5 years, and I'm fine, and I really appreciate your calling, but why are you calling? And he said, well, Dad, I've been thinking about it, and you're not as bad a parent as I thought you were. And I said, well, that's different. And he said, yes. He said, and I understand that we didn't get along together, but I really want to work on it. And if you're willing to change, which I liked, it was true, I'm willing to change. That's a pretty adult conversation. And since that day, he hasn't changed tremendously, and I haven't changed tremendously, but we have a relationship that's really strong because we began to see each other and treat each other with love. Unconditional love. Rather than judging each other and deciding that he didn't show up like I want him to show up and I didn't show up like he wanted me to show up. So, if you're having a challenge in your life, a relationship challenge, or if you don't think your days are as happy as they should be, or you don't reach out enough and touch someone, remember some of these stories. And do exactly that. Reach out and touch someone. Love someone that you're having trouble loving unconditionally and really think about how you're showing up. And be happy. Because when we're happy, we're at peace. God bless. And so now